Welcome to the June 20th regular meeting of the Lewis Palmer Board of Education. To view this meeting's presentation documents, please access Board Docs. The link to the Board Docs website can be found via the D38 website, www.lewispalmer.org, on the Board of Education meetings webpage. To view the live stream video of this meeting, please go to the Lewis Palmer School District number 38 YouTube page. Ms. Wood, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clausen.
Here.
Ms. Phillips.
Here.
Mr. Schwartz.
Here.
Mr. Taylor.
Here?
Ms. Upchurch.
Here.
Thank you. I've asked Dennis Coates if he would lead us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Thank you, Dennis. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Any questions or comments?
I do have a question.
Please.
On the consent agenda, on the land use annexation petition form, sorry, this came as a surprise. Would that be a better board discussion versus a consent item, or should I just pull it out of consent?
Dr. Summers, do you want to talk to that, the proposed annexation?
I'm happy to provide a brief of that item so that you understand more of those dynamics as we move into the approval of consent agenda, if that's acceptable.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Anything else? Ms. Wood, could you call the roll or the vote?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
Excellent. B1, District Accountability Advisory Committee recognition. Our Assistant Superintendent Amber Wetstein will introduce Christy Milks, our 2021-2022 DAC Chair, for special recognition and farewell.
Hi, everyone. For those who are not aware, the District Accountability Advisory Committee is a group of dedicated teachers, community members, and parents who provide input to the board on our strategic priorities, as well as various legislative requirements, such as teacher evaluation processes, school improvement planning, and budget input. And tonight we want to honor the work they do for our district, and more specifically to Miss Christy Milks, who's been leading this process for the last 2 years. We greatly appreciate her dedication and all of the time that she has spent helping us prepare agendas and facilitating meetings, as well as just being an outstanding member of our community. So thank you so much. Please help me honor Christy. And I'll say Christy will be providing a thorough update to the board on all of the accomplishments of the DAC later this evening.
Hey, Christy, would you mind turning it around, please?
Oh, can I take a picture? Okay, do you want me in the picture? Or when I come up and do the picture?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to take a
Good answer. Good answer.
I resemble that.
Where's my invitation? Hey, thank you so much. We appreciate all that you've done.
Didn't know this was happening.
Our next agenda item are public comments. For board policy BEDH, public participation at school board meetings, all regular and special meetings of the board shall be open to the public because the board desires to hear the viewpoints of all citizens throughout the district and also needs to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner, it will schedule time during our board meeting for brief comments from residents and property owners of the district, parents, and employees. There is one time for public comment, and it will be limited to 30 minutes. In an effort to allow all who wish to speak, the amount of time dedicated to each speaker will be dependent on the number of people who sign up, with the entire comment period not to exceed 30 minutes. If 10 or fewer sign up, each person will have 3 minutes to address the board. The sign-up sheet for public comments was available until 5 p.m. in the Learning Center. The board respects the right of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. We believe that public comments that are critical of district staff, however, often cause unnecessary harm to those employees and to the education of our students. As a result, we prefer that members of the public share any criticisms of employees in writing with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff and then involving the board as necessary. If you choose instead to address a personnel issue publicly, please understand that the board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they assume the risk of legal action by district employees in the event the affected employees believe that any comments about them violate legal standards. In addition, you may be asked to appoint a spokesman if the topic is a group concern. Lastly, keep in mind we may have K through 12 students in the audience. Please keep all comments appropriate to our audience. Our first public comment will be by Jackie Burhans, and I'll leave the topic to you.
Short people. Okay, hi, my name is Jackie Burhans. I'm a community member here in D38, and I wanted to take this opportunity at this June board meeting where public comment is allowed to wish the board and other attendees in person and virtual happy holidays. First of all, we're well into Pride Month, which celebrates unity, visibility, and equality for the LGBTQ+ community. It looks toward a kinder, fairer future and recognizes the advances and setbacks in the last few decades. It is sometimes said that the first Pride was a riot in recognition of the Stonewall Uprising that took place in June of 1969, with the first parade march happening on the one-year anniversary. Pride Month became an official holiday in a 1999 presidential proclamation. So for all of the D38 students, teachers, staff, parents, and community members who are LGBTQ+, or who are related to them, I want to say, we see you, we support you, we love you. A great resource for Pride celebrations for the rest of June and beyond is www.one-colorado.org. I also want to wish you a very happy Juneteenth. The actual date was yesterday, Sunday, June 19th, but the federal and state holiday is today, Monday, June 20th. And although it's an optional holiday, most government offices and some businesses are closed today, which is something you might want to think about for board calendaring in the future. If you, like me when I first moved here, are new to Juneteenth, it celebrates the anniversary of the date in 1865 when Union Army General Gordon Granger arrived to tell enslaved people in Galveston, Texas, that they were free, a full 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by President Lincoln. Juneteenth was made a federal holiday in 2021 and adopted as a state holiday this year. An excellent resource to learn more is www.juneteenth.com, which describes the holiday as an opportunity to come together in appreciation, reconciliation, and commemoration. One quote calls for it to showcase the strength of the American spirit, to recognize wrong and set about making it right, however long it takes. There was a wonderful 3-day event at America the Beautiful Park with music, food, booths, and more. I recommend everyone watch for it next year and go if you can. And I hope we can all agree that these notable events should be learned and celebrated in our schools and that we should teach the truth and learn from history. Thank you.
Thank you. James Howell.
Good evening. At the last board meeting, board member Upchurch spoke about Initiative 63 during her legislative update.
I'm here to ask the board to actively support this initiative. If approved by the voters in November, Initiative 63 will add about $900 million a year to Colorado's funding for education, earmarking those additional dollars for attracting, retaining, and compensating teachers and student support professionals. Initiative 63 will allocate an additional 1/3 of 1% of all taxable income to the state education fund before the Tabor surplus is calculated. This is in addition to what currently goes into the state education fund through the same process. When you recently surveyed the community about their perceptions of the district and their receptiveness to an MLO to increase teacher pay, one of the responses you documented was the suggestion that D38 leadership do more to lobby for additional funds at the state level. Initiative 63 is the best chance to increase education funding from the state anywhere on the horizon. If Initiative 63 passes, it will help D38 retain and hire excellent teachers, but it won't address the competitive disadvantage D38 faces because surrounding districts already offer approximately 10% more pay than D38 does. That's because the increased funding would go to all districts based on the formula currently used. Initiative 63 has been endorsed by the Colorado Association of School Executives, the Colorado Association of School Boards, the Colorado PTA, and the El Paso County PTA, among others. Ms. Upchurch did not mention that because Initiative 63 is a grassroots effort, not the work of Colorado legislators, 125,000 signatures will need to be collected to put it before the voters in November. Just purely coincidentally, I have a petition here tonight that you can sign if you want to advance the initiative to the ballot. Finally, I urge you to put Initiative 63 on your agenda for a future meeting and consider passing a resolution in support of it. Earlier today, I sent you all a link to Cosby's draft of a resolution in support of Initiative 63 as a starting point for your own resolution if you want to go in that direction. Since local school boards will make the final decision about how the additional money is spent, a resolution would be your chance to let the community know exactly how you would use the funds if they vote to provide them. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is B3, board member comments. And if you all don't mind, I'm going to start with Teresa and move down to the end with Matt. So Teresa.
Sure. I'm glad I'm cognizant of the fact that I was called into this meeting, so I'll keep my comments short. I just wanted to make a comment in gratitude for the efforts and actions this past year. There have been many challenges, and when we reflect on where we were 12 months ago and 24 months ago, the challenges at all levels of our educational system have been significant. And I think that flexibility, resiliency, and steadfast commitment have sustained D38. And I'm grateful for the administrative team, for every staff member in D38, and for my fellow board members' commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Tiffany?
Sure. I first want to start off by saying thank you, Christy, for all you've done for DAC, and not just DAC, for our district and for our school. I met Christy through our school accountability and advisory committee at Lewis Palmer Elementary School many years ago, so thank you so much for your leadership. And I congratulate Kelly Bain and Holly Rollins, who will continue with that torch throughout next year, and we'll be digging deeper into some of the initiatives that DAC covered this year and going into the future. So I'll leave some of the presentation parts for Christy to cover. I too want to make sure that we know that that we celebrate here in D38. I'm proud that we celebrate opportunity and freedom for all, and that we celebrate each and every student for who they are and as they are, as unique individuals, and right where they are. So I think that's very important, that we are ensuring that each and every student knows that they are belonged, wanted, and mattered here in our school district. As James pointed out, Initiative 63 does indeed still need signatures should it make it on the ballot. I would hope that if it passes, I would hope that we would use that monies towards teacher compensation, would be my preference. That's just me putting that out there. And just want to say thank you to all of our district staff who are still busy working day in and day out, 5 days a week. Just because summer started doesn't mean they get the summers off. So for everybody else, happy summer. And I hope families are being able to enjoy some relaxing time with their children and their families and really getting to enjoy the heat of the day. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Tiffany. Ron?
No comments today, thank you.
Thank you. Matt?
I don't have any comments as well, Mr. Taylor. Thank you.
Excellent. So I would just like to echo what Teresa said and Tiffany said. I appreciate the things you've said. I agree with you. I'm grateful for the service opportunity we have to be here and to work with the school district. I'm grateful for the 5 priorities that we've focused on for the last 3 years, the progress that we've made in having a safe and welcoming environment and having a curriculum that is reflective of our community's values, having teachers that are second to none, and to have financial management that manages our resources in a positive way, and a communications program that hopefully is adding to the transparency of what is happening in our school district. I'm going to share something that Dr. Summers shared that had a real strong impact on me, and that was in an interview process. I'll leave that part out, who you were interviewing, but the person was asked the question about transparency, and the person's response was something to the effect that we have to be vulnerable in order to be transparent. And that really hits home for me. Transparency is about vulnerability and being totally honest with ourselves and with others. And I'm grateful that we have people in this school district that walk that talk. And I see it regularly, and I appreciate it, and I commend Dr. Summers for his excellent leadership in D38. Dr. Summers?
Thank you very much. Appreciate those comments, as well as our public comments this evening. We do have I'll call it summer edition of the superintendent update. So I just need help. Thanks, Mark. Mark, do you mind driving, or do you want me to? All right, thank you. All right, so Mr. Taylor, you did an outstanding job of summarizing, I think, what each of the 5 priorities represent, sort of in big picture format. Here's just a few details that we can touch on so that you have a sense of where we're at over the summer months. As you can expect, Schneider Electric's summer work is going fast and furious. The project completion is estimated for the end of the summer. One of the things we want to call out here, though, is the alignment to not just energy efficiency, but a future sustainability plan that will invest available dollars and resources into ways that we can be very creative, engaging, transformational, really, in our efforts to set the stage for how energy efficiency can transform this organization from where we are to how we continue to move into the future. So I look forward to going into a lot more detail of that. Mr. Coulter will be very excited to present more of those details. And beyond even the Schneider Electric work, you can see tangible evidence. Look no further than the parking lot of Big Red. Lots of improvements that are happening both here as well as across all of our sites. So, Ms. Upchurch, as you said, the summer months, especially for our grounds, our maintenance, and a variety of crews, this is our busy time, but they like it, and they're doing a great job. So we appreciate all that's being done there. I do want to just briefly elevate that we will be refreshing a focus on safety training as we go into the fall, as we do every year. Given the recent tragedy and all of the corresponding difficulties that are attached to an event such as what occurred in Uvalde, Texas, I can tell you that we've had quite a few conversations with Dennis Coates and his team. We're looking at a lot of different ways to continue to strengthen and reinforce the great effort that's already in place. I don't think there's ever a day or a moment that goes by in a day that we're not prioritizing safety and security across all of our campuses, and a lot of that credit goes to Dennis and his team, as well as good partnerships with law enforcement, as well as our staff doing heroes work. So more to come with all of that, but definitely wanted to shout that out briefly. And then the other thing, just to give you a quick update in terms of another major project, we're at about 35%. I asked Chris for kind of an update around that geothermal phase 2 process, and it is progressing on schedule. Should be ready to go again prior to the school year starting. Any quick questions around priority 1 that I can help address?
I do have one. I'd just like you to elaborate a bit on the byproduct of the Schneider Electric in terms of safety, and what's the status of all of our buildings now with the
Sure.
additional
Well, most notably, the installation of security vestibules, which was priority 1A as we went into our summer work last summer. All of that is officially in place and fully complete. So that's work that we're really proud of by taking that aggressive effort back when we did at the forefront of the 2021-22 school year. In terms of the other related work, it really is all in an effort to help create the types of learning environments that are going to be most advantageous to all of our kids and our staff. So I can go into more detail if you like. That's just a high-level note.
Thank you.
And again, major kudos to Dennis and his team. All right, I've actually got a couple of guest stars for this Priority 2 update, but I'm going to say a few words first about the summer learning that is underway, beginning with our elementary summer school with a theme about wild about learning. So we have about 175 kiddos that are currently attending school Monday through Thursday at Lewis Palmer Elementary School, and they're receiving a variety of learning supports in relationship to reading, math, as well as extension activities in science, art, and other pieces. And I'm going to do our introduction here in just a moment. Our middle school program is going to be focused on a learning recovery lesson online for rising 6th through 8th grade students, which we have 61 students that are currently enrolled. And then the work at the middle level will really pick up as we move into end of July, early August with the Patriot Prep and Boot Camp for our incoming 7th and 8th grade kiddos. And we anticipate over 100 students participating at that time. Middle does a really nice job of setting the stage for a successful transition into the middle school experience. And then we also have our high school program with 94 students currently participating in a combination of both in-person and online offerings. 35 of our English language learners are participating across all levels as we continue to meet the needs of our culturally and linguistically diverse population. And then a big part of summer school is also our extended school year service, which includes special education services across a continuum of learners and needs. And I'm pleased to welcome here 2 of our summer school coordinators. We have Miss Anita Shu and Miss Edie Pettigrew. So Anita and Edie, come on up, and I know you want to share a few things, and we're excited that you're here.
Thank you. We just want to, first of all, thank you guys all for supporting summer school. Research indicates that anytime you have a program such as what we've created here in the district, we are allowing those kids to keep that kind of maintaining and sustaining those academic goals that they have. So as Dr. Summers said, we're focusing on math and reading, heavily focused on reading. And we've got about 175 students that have shown up with smiling faces every day for the last couple of weeks, and we've got a couple more days to go here. And one of the things we wanted to highlight for you is that we are providing books for the children that have attended. So Edie's going to do a little Vanna White here for us. All kids in the grades 3 through 5 are receiving the Kids Britannica book. And what's kind of awesome about this is not only are they receiving it to take home at the end of the summer, but they received it on the first day, and teachers have kept it in their classrooms. So they've provided them with some activities and extensions for writing, some science components of it, just getting them, engaging them in that creativity and curiosity that we all know makes you love learning. We also have all the students in K through 2 are receiving a little pack of books that's appropriate for their grade level so that they can continue that reading and that mission throughout the summer. So we have those items too. Edie has a few samples of some students' writing that they have connected there too. She'll send that down. And we've also provided you with lovely summer attire that you can wear, a lovely shirt that supports our program. And we'd invite you, we have 3 more days in building. Dr. Summers came last week. He got the $2 tour. You are all welcome to come, and we're happy to show you what the exciting things are going on. So do you have any questions for Ms. Pettigrew?
I highly recommend the tour. I'm going to put Ms. Hsu on the spot here. So one of the things that was really impressive as we had the opportunity to zoom in a bit more was not only the quality of teachers that are in our system that are spending some of their summer with us, but also many of our student assistants who I think just did or are doing a marvelous job of really attending to not only how we're supporting the kids, but their learning process that goes into that as well. And is there anything you'd like to add to that particular dimension?
Echoing that, we have, probably about 60 to 70 staff members, but what we did was all of our classrooms have a student worker attached to them. So they're kids that are anywhere between, some of them are still in high school, 16 up into, I think we have 21, 22-year-olds that are kind of working in their educational degree, and yet they have stepped up. They've made connections with kids. You walk around the classrooms, you see them coming out and supporting students that maybe are struggling. It's phenomenal. And so, and that is a byproduct of Lewis Palmer School District. They've all gone through our programs in our schools. So it's pretty awesome to see. I know you're all reading, so we'll have you let go.
Which buildings are you guys in?
We are in Lewis Palmer Elementary, and then the middle school's there, and the high school is she's got some at Lewis Palmer and at Palmer Ridge.
So all the district elementaries are at Lewis Palmer Elementary?
Correct, yes.
One of the pieces that I'd like to highlight is just some of the instructional components we've been able to connect the students with. As you're looking at the artifacts in front of you, the writing piece has been really exciting to connect with nonfiction state standards. We're actually also using our benchmark programming in writing, which connects learning that the students have already done in the classroom during the school year. And we're also trying to do some reteaching and just embedding that understanding deeper in each student's knowledge base. And Mr. Rick Frampton also really challenged us when we were coordinating and organizing this effort to really be as inclusive as we possibly could. And we're really proud to share that we were able to connect with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science to provide 2 on-site learning experiences for our students that were highly inclusive. Students from our moderate needs program and our severe student needs program, SSN program, our ESY students and our language learners, including our general classroom learners, were all able to engage in that learning. We had a special program for 3rd through 5th grade that really highlighted birds and flight called Built to Fly. And then we had our really exciting wild senses experience today for kindergarten through 2nd grade. And that was a museum agent that came and brought a really special interactive program. So it's just one more layer we were able to add to a really immersive, rich learning experience for our students.
Any comments or questions?
Ladies, thank you for doing such a great job. We appreciate it. Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Upchurch.
Oh, no, I was going to say, after the board meeting, I'd like to look through this more, read these more.
Bring them when you come for your tour.
Or I can come for the tour. There you go.
I had one question, and that is, we do assessments throughout the year, right? A couple times a year. How do you monitor progress or growth, achievement through this summer program?
So essentially, because it's a 12-day program, what we've done is we are collecting all the data from their end of the year. We have their DIBELs, we have their NWA for all the students that are participating, as well as attendance. That's a vital component of it. And then what we will do is we'll marry that up with the data that will happen in the fall right away. So we will see ultimately, as I turned to Dr. Summers, I said, we can build a path. We might not climb the mountain, but we can build that path and make sure that they don't make that regression component of it.
Excellent. So to make sure I understand.
Sure.
You track them by every child.
Basically, yes.
And essentially,
We have all their
then
data.
you know what the tests were this spring, you'll see again in the fall.
Absolutely.
And you'll know the results based on those normal tests or normally timed tests, but you'll see the impact from this program in
Correct.
those results.
Yep.
Awesome.
And then we can make adjustments based on what we see.
Yeah, very good, very good. Every child, every day. I love it. Very good.
Mr. Taylor, I think it's really important too, as you're thinking about how we organized this as a coordinated effort district-wide, 5 elementary schools. I think over 200 students were invited. We really doubled down on the efficacy of our efforts because it is 12 half-days. And so we worked with building principals, instructional coaches, reading interventionists, and classroom teachers district-wide across 5 elementary schools. And we will measure that efficacy in the fall because we have that rostered list of our language learners, our students in the general classroom, and our ESY learners.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is cool that you got them to work during the summer, too. Kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Great job. Thanks, Anita and Edie. Appreciate you being here as well. Okay, that'll take us to our Priority 3 update. So as we've done the past few months, just an update on where we are in regards to hiring. So as of today, and this continues to be a moving, fluid list of numbers, we currently have vacancies in the teacher range of 9 elementary school, 3 middle, and 3 high. 3 counselors across our elementary schools, 3 social workers, 20 paraprofessionals, 7 preschool, and 8 custodians. Now, while those numbers still present a challenge for us, I would just want to elevate really quick all of the work that has gone into the past several weeks from our HR teams as well as our principals and our building leadership teams, those that have been heavily engaged in the hiring effort. While we have had a number of licensed candidates who have turned down jobs, primarily due to pay, I am pleased to report that we do have 75 licensed employees who will be starting with us officially on August 4th. So lots of good work that's gone into this, lots of hard work. It's still proving to be quite a challenge, but I do think, and we are still very confident in our ability to fill at a minimum, our licensed openings going into the beginning of the school year. That's going to be critical for us so that we're fully staffed and ready to welcome all of the kiddos that are coming our way. Any questions in 3 that I can address? Moving right along then. Priority 4, so in addition to a couple of agenda items this evening, which will include the ability to approve our proposed budget. We had our last financial advisory committee of the year. This represents, I believe it was meeting 4, if I'm accurate, Mr. Schwartz. And I believe that was as well attended as our first meeting. So lots of good work that's happening in the FAC realm. We have completed our end of year grant reporting processes, which one bullet really doesn't summarize this work completely well. There's just a lot of work that's going into a number of grants that we're monitoring right now, and wanted to elevate the good work of our finance team in that effort. And then you all will see an update to our insurance plan with SIDSIP, which will be renewed on July 1st. You see the cost basis increase there that's represented. So that's a fairly nominal amount given all of the dynamics that are happening right now, inflationary-wise. Priority 5, we do have helped or intended to bolster our Priority 3 efforts in hiring paid ads that have been deployed to help fill critical positions. We also have a 4th of July festival, which I know we've made mention of a couple of times previously. First and foremost, we will have a number of staff that will be participating as parade marshals in the Kiwanian Parade. So we're really appreciative of the Kiwanians' efforts in this opportunity to honor our heroes, which are educators across the community. And then we also will be hosting a more localized event right here out in front of Big Red following the parade. This will include a draw for families, so we'll have a number of activities and different events that kids can participate in, as well as some music, some food trucks, some different ways of welcoming the community over to Big Red, to our place, so to speak. I think we coined it officially, D38 Place, July 4th holiday festival. So we're going to build off of the momentum from the parade and be hanging around. And any board members that are around on July 4th, if you'd like to be part of that with us and volunteer a little bit of time, we'd love to have you. And then lastly, we are looking again at deploying a variety of resources with our potential ballot initiative, which include language and additional information that is currently being developed. Still a lot of good work that needs to be fleshed out in that effort, but we want to make sure that that is taking us forward as we go into later summer. Go ahead and next slide, Mark. Okay, I think the last month we mentioned our Bare Necessity Theater Company being nominated for several Bobby G Awards. We're pleased to announce tonight that out of 6 nominations, including the most prized category of best overall production for the musical Once Upon a Mattress, our kiddos at PRHS won the Outstanding Achievement in Choreography Award with Christy Inama, Georgia Lawrence, and Rihanna McHugh that were warranted with special recognition. So congratulations to the fantastic efforts in the Bare Necessity Theater Company. We also are proud to display a state discus champion, Alec Falk, who earned a state championship for a throw in the discus that I believe was pretty close to a state record, if I'm not mistaken. So the team placed 11th overall in the state competition, and women's team also took 17th overall. Last but not least, we have Lewis Palmer Middle School students that are also celebrated for some fundraising efforts, a total of $1,485 this spring through Light the Night, which benefited the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, specifically students in Miss Lamberth's 7th grade homeroom and Mrs. Sanger's 8th grade homeroom earned a donut party to end the year. Always a fun time for raising the most money in the homeroom competition. So great job, Patriots. And that, I believe, wraps up our June 20th edition of the update. Any other questions that I can respond to?
Quick question. On slide number 4, our vacancies versus new hires.
Sure.
If I look at that right, and we have, for licensed staff, we've filled so far 75 licensed employees, but it still shows a vacancy of 15 teachers, for example. That means licensed teachers and is it just?
Teachers, special service providers, anyone that needs a license to complete their work responsibility.
So we're looking at basically 90 plus that we had open up.
Yes.
Okay. That was my question.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Teresa, anything?
Not from me, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Summers.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate the update. Did I say how much we appreciate your leadership?
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Before and after.
Means a lot.
And during. Thank you.
And I'm
very
grateful
much.
for a great team. So I can only be as good as the folks around me, and they do fantastic work. So very happy to share that message broadly across the entire organization.
Please do. So the next agenda item is C1, District Accountability Advisory Committee update. And our co-chair, Christy Milks, will present the year-end DAC review along with Amber.
Hi there, I'm Christy Milks. This was my second year of being the co-chair of this fine committee, the District Accountability Advisory Committee. But I've actually been involved with it since 2014. I looked back, I couldn't believe how long ago that was. But this is our update. We give it every year. And the priority 5 focus is build strong relationships through effective communication. And that's what we're doing today. The purpose of the DAC is to encourage community engagement and voice, solicit input into the board's strategic plan priorities, that was a new thing for us this year, school improvement initiatives, teacher evaluation system, budget, and share information and seek feedback about the district's schools and program offerings. One of the things we did this year and years prior is we have the meetings at different schools, and there's a tour of the school ahead of time, and it was just nice to be in different schools. School improvement planning. During this year, the 21-22 school year, schools facilitated school improvement planning in their individual school strategic plans, which was, different this year. Beginning in the fall of 2022, schools will submit their strategic action plans and goals via the state's Unified Improvement Plan template. So next year, these plans will be reviewed by the DAC in September, and they must be approved by the board and submitted to the Department of Education by October 15th.
Christy, before we move on, I apologize for interrupting, but this state unified improvement plan, is there a framework associated with that? Does it align with our priorities?
So we will be aligning it with our priorities. I will be working with principals, and they will take the work that they've done all through this school year with their strategic planning and essentially copy that content into the state's template. They'll be focusing, as they did this year, on the first 3 priorities, which really are more the school-focused priorities, and you'll see action plans and goals related to those when you approve those in the fall.
So it has its own framework, but you can revise it slightly to align with ours, is essentially it.
Yes, there are specific requirements that have to be included, and when districts and schools are higher performing, they have more flexibility in the content that they include. So we will be including very specific, aligned, strategic plan priorities within that template.
And in October, I would appreciate if we could see where you had any kind of misalignment, if it exists. I'm not saying it will or does, but if there's anything that's troublesome, right, I'd like to be aware of that, if there is anything. And there may not be, and that'll be fine.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
So the DAC membership this year, the co-chairs were myself and Kelly Bain. Our Board of Education representation was Tiffany Upchurch. Our administrative liaison was Dr. Michael Brahm. And then there's a parent and staff representative from each school in the district, including Monument Academy. We also had student representation, which this young lady was lovely. Her name is Amber Wright. And then we have community member representation, which I'd like to see more of in the future. But Harriet Halbig, she's a writer for the OCN, and so she wrote about the meetings as well. There's 2 current subcommittees to the DAC, the Special Education Advisory Committee, SEAC. SEAC consists of parents, teachers, and staff members that support the understanding of the needs of students receiving special education services. The SEAC provides input to the district's programming for students with special needs. And then there's also GELT, which is the Gifted Education Leadership Team. The GELT provides input into the district's gifted and talented education program, including student identification, program offerings, and communication processes. So this year's priorities and activities, we reviewed and provided input into each of the board's strategic plan priorities. We reviewed one in each meeting. Provided input into the teacher evaluation process, participated in Engage and Elevate community engagement sessions. I only got to go to one, but it was great. Provided input into the district budget, including a review of the district's federal title programs. So next year, 22-23 school year, Kelly Bain is going to stay on for a second year, and Holly Rollins is going to take her place. Kelly's taking my place, Holly's taking her place. Talked about considering a name change to encourage additional participation and community voice. Engage and Elevate seemed to be a great title for the stuff that you guys did. Continued to prioritize DAC engagements aligned with the board's strategic plan priorities. Propose maybe expanding the subcommittees, like the Financial Advisory Committee, Wellness Committee, maybe just adding some more. Increase community participation in DAC meetings. So the meetings, there's 6 a year. Typically, it's the second Tuesday of the month from 6 to 8, and those are the dates of the planned meetings.
And I'll jump in because we did make a change after we published this presentation, and so we are proposing February 7th instead of the 21st due to a district conflict.
Okay.
We'll make sure that that's updated for the public.
Okay. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Christy, given that you are an outgoing co-chair and the breadth of your experience since 2014, I know that participation in DAC is always something that we're looking to increase. And can you give us some insight, your personal insight as to what might be helpful with that? And part B of that question is, can the board as a whole or board members provide any support for increased participation in DAC that we may not be already doing or be aware of?
Okay, yeah, great question. I think for me, I didn't know that DAC even existed. I knew that I wanted to be involved in my kids' elementary school. The PTO isn't really for me, so I wanted to do something different, and so I got involved in the Building Accountability Committee, which then I needed to go to the DAC meetings as well. But I think for me, it was helpful to have, my kids are so spread out that a lot of times I had a kiddo in high school, a kiddo in middle school, and a kid in elementary school. So it was important for me to see the district as a whole. However, I do think publicizing the meet, I'm not exactly sure what we can do, but it's almost like I didn't even know that committee existed before I got into it through the elementary school. So, proposing that name change might help, knowing that, the community can be involved as well. So I don't know, just getting the word out more.
Yeah, we've thought about more broadly advertising, so to speak, the meetings, so that the community is welcome to come and attend, even if they're not an official member of the board, because we do have some legislated requirements for membership. But we would love to move in a direction where it's more like the Engage and Elevate sessions, where everyone's voice can come and be active during those meetings.
Can I jump in and share a little bit of my perspective on that?
Please.
Yeah, I think what Amber and Christy are saying are spot on ideas. When I looked at different district accountability advisory committees throughout the state of the other 178 school districts, how they're laid out on their website, there's some really neat and informative pieces of information that are in different districts that I think we can glean some ideas from. And when we talked about the subcommittees, I think that's also very helpful because that engages and involves other individuals that may not be involved in DAC. The GELT and the SEAC is legislatively required, but when we talk about for example, the Financial Advisory Committee being a part of that, so that it's an alignment with our 5 strategies. And if we have, say, 5 subcommittees, for example, that align with each of our subcommittees, I think that also brings folks in and broadens that engagement as well. So I think that might be another way to help bring folks in as well. Reaching out to Chamber of Commerce is another way to get the community at large more involved as well. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. Ron, did you have a comment?
Actually, a couple questions. No, you're right. Start with a comment, finish with 2 questions. First of all, not really good at math, but 2014 to 22 is about 8 years.
Yeah.
So the magnitude of hours you volunteered for the betterment of our kids and our staff and our neighborhood matters. It's thankless work, but we're thankful. That's part 1. So the flowers are probably
100%.
an understated thank you gift.
Well, I wasn't expecting the flowers, so.
I'm sure Miss Upchurch will take them then, right?
No, Christy deserves them.
Secondly, and probably far more importantly, is you began to answer my question from Ms. Phillips' question. I also am concerned the community may not have an understanding of the reason we have a DAC. It may be mandated by the state, but my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that it's there because the community owns the schools, and to help create some interaction around accountability to the community for what the schools are doing. But it appears to me it's morphed into a really wonderful partnership to where the employees, volunteers from the community, and board members work together to achieve goals. So in that regard, in the 8 or so years you've been doing this, what are the top 2 or 3 things that stick out in your mind that have had a real lasting impact?
I think it's just mainly the amount of information you can get from those meetings. It ranges from legislation to the budget to hearing, what teacher salaries are based on. I didn't know any of that. So that, it was eye-opening for me. So that's all I can say really, is just that there's so much information you can get from those meetings, and it's a formal meeting, yes, but it does feel like, even there's a lot of people in the committee, it feels like a small committee. It really does, the way it's arranged. So
Thank you.
I guess that's all I have to say.
Matt, any comments or questions? No. Awesome. Well, I'm just going to echo what Ron said. That's a big commitment. We appreciate it. You've impacted far more than you even are aware. I know that without any doubt. So thank you very much for your service. This report, the way you've aligned everything, it fits our district so well. So great work. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Let's see. Our next agenda item then is C2. And I'm going to make a motion. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of Lewis Palmer School District 38 in El Paso County, State of Colorado, in accordance with CRS 22-14-105, that the 2022-2023 annual budget be adopted, and that the amounts shown in the resolution attached to the minutes of this meeting be appropriated to each fund as specified in the adopted budget for the ensuing fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
I have one comment, and that is that I really do applaud and appreciate the initiative we've started with having this flexible budget model and mindset, because it really does give us an opportunity and the flexibility to make sure we're taking care of our students and our teachers and our schools as best we can with what we have.
Thank you.
I second that comment.
Thank you. Teresa, anything?
I third that comment. Thank you.
Awesome. Ms. Wood, would you call the vote?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion, number 2, be it resolved that the Board of Education of Lewis Palmer School District 38 authorizes the superintendent or designee to borrow available unencumbered cash balances in the capital reserve, building reserve, transportation, and nutritional food services funds in accordance with CRS 22-44-113 to be used to fund short-term cash needs of the district during fiscal year 2022-2023, and be it further resolved that the funding for incomplete capital reserve fund projects be carried forward to fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
I'll second.
Comments or questions?
Another comment, please. Dr. Summers, would you please share with those that have not sat on the board voting on this every year, what exactly this resolution says and does?
Ultimately, it frees up cash if we need it on hand, and it allows us to be flexible in the way that we're completing capital service projects to the degree that they're not necessarily always on a straight fiscal year schedule.
But
So
it still,
twofold.
it still gets, it gets rolled back in. It still gets paid for itself, so to speak. Does that?
Yes.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
So tax collections come in once or twice a year, but this funding occurs every month. So we have to actually, we have this kind of cash flow. So during the course of the year, if necessary, we use funds from these other funds to cover the general fund, but then the money comes back in later. So it's a temporary funding for cash flow, but it doesn't impact the bottom line.
We still balance our budget.
That's correct. That's part one. The second part is about capital projects that are underway right now. And so we have, in order to, get from June to July for budgeting purposes, we have to have this resolution because these projects are ongoing throughout the summer. They've been approved and they are in the right buckets, but we just have to have that carryover. Did that help?
Yeah, I meant for folks that might not know.
I liked Mr. Taylor's answer a little bit better. You did a little more context. I didn't do as much. I answered it very much like a superintendent would answer it. Thank you for expanding on my thinking, Mr. Taylor.
You're welcome.
Well done.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Wood.
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Taylor.
Aye.
Aye.
I have one more motion. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of Lewis Palmer School District authorizes the use of a portion of the 2022-2023 beginning fund balance of the general fund as designated and for the purposes set forth in the resolution presented. Did you all get a chance to look at that detail?
Are you talking about the nutrition services one?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen.
Aye.
Ms. Phillips.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Upchurch.
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is C3, Financial Planning and Analysis.
Being that we did not have Ms. Overton with us tonight, I'm happy to answer any questions that there may be, but I did not officially prepare any presentation for this agenda item.
Well, I did review them, and they are consistent with prior months, and so I saw nothing that was out of line. It all is very consistent and as expected, I would say.
Agreed.
Any other comments or questions?
We're moving right along.
We are moving right along. So let's go to C4, which is discuss the impact of recent legislation. Should call that potential impact, but it's a potential impact on our D38 policy.
Yes, and I'm happy to co-share and partner with Ms. Upchurch in this presentation. So I'm going to take the driver's seat for the moment, but Ms. Upchurch, feel free to chime in with anything. And I know there's a little bit additional information that we can spend some time on that maybe isn't included in the slide deck. So the overview of the 2022 legislative session had 657 total bills that were introduced. Of those, 109 that were education related, so a total of 16.6%. What we are highlighting in this presentation fall under the following categories. A little bit around accountability, early childhood, educator related, finance and safety and health related bills. 2 additional links that you find built into the presentation that anyone can access. The first of which is a comprehensive Cosby legislative summary And I'll just give credit where credit's due. I took a lot of the information that are in these subsequent slides directly from the Cosby summary. There's also a legislative tracker. As you know, CASE is also very active in the lobbying efforts around education bills. So that gives you kind of a different mechanism for tracking the legislation that occurred over the course of this past session. So that sets the stage for a few slides related to these overarching categories. The first of which is an update to accountability. So just note that we will be transitioning back to a standard K through 12 accountability system as we're moving into the 22-23 school year. So this requires CDE to include data concerning the percentage of students who contributed to state growth for 21-22, and we're restoring the statewide targets that were required for 2018-19. So the pause that we've been on the past couple of years is now unpaused. We will receive a district performance summary, framework summary, as well as school performance frameworks, and those should be released in early August, Amber? August, September timeframe? The fall. So with all that said, a lot of data that will be coming our way that we can really zoom in on and have a good understanding of how we performed as a district, our respective schools, down to the student achievement and growth data points that will be very important to guide next steps and some decisions. This is a very lengthy slide, but I'm just going to highlight a few things. We've talked a little bit about the House Bill 1295 that essentially establishes a new Department of Early Childhood, which is officially launching on July 1st. And this creates the Universal Preschool Program, which will be in place as we move into next year with an effort toward aligning and coordinating programming across various regions of the state under the heading of what's referred to as, here's a new acronym for us, Local Coordinating Organization, so an LCO. The short end of it here for us is that there is currently an application that I believe is being submitted today that identifies the local coordinating organization as joint initiatives, which is proposing that they would be the El Paso County local coordinating organization. And then there's basically a year of transition work that's going to be occurring in that process, guided by the Department of Early Childhood under the new direction and leadership of Lisa Roy, who is now named as the Executive Director. Ms. Upchurch, I know you're pretty familiar with this one. Is there anything I missed in this that you want to elevate?
The probably for impact to the state education budget, but we'll see what that's determined to be. I cannot recall. I was looking at that. I can't recall the exact amount right now that they've allocated.
I think it's the creation of the department itself and the staffing of that department. So absolutely. And then there's going to be a lot of additional implications for how all of this is implemented. So we'll continue to keep you abreast of this as we go forward.
Yes. The other thing about this one is it will be 10 hours per week. Oh, it is in there. Sorry. Yes, I knew that.
You're good.
Yep.
Okay, moving right along. You may hear about some shifts to the K through 12 licensed personnel performance evaluation framework. So essentially, the bill is directing the state board to adopt rules to ensure that evaluations that are completed for the 23-24 school year, so not next year but beyond, will now be based on 30%, where it's 50% right now of an educator's evaluation based on the academic growth of students. Up to 10% of that, 30% can be based on collective measures, so essentially school performance goals. The remaining 20% has to be a function of individual educator goals. The policy impact for us here is that we will be revisiting policy GCO. So we're going to look a little more closely at that. The changes are not as vast for the 22-23 year, so we will have a year of transition where we can really zoom in on this one. I do think it represents a step in the right direction. So that's just my armchair quarterback opinion of this bill.
I have a question on this one.
Yep.
Will
go
we
for it.
need to spend time on training staff on how this new legislation will affect their evaluations?
Not immediately, but the bulk of the training is really going to focus on how we are equipping evaluators using the rubric to ensure that we're conducting fair, accurate, consistent types of evaluation practices. The other thing that this bill speaks to is opportunities for innovative evaluation practices to include the potential for peer observations, as well as a modified rubric for teachers who have been identified or previously ranked as highly effective. So there's a lot of opportunity for continued growth and improvement in this area, and I think the training that you're speaking of, Ms. Upchurch, is really going to amount to how do we, I think the bigger question is less about how are we compliant with this, and it's more about how are we creating a culture and a system that is leveraging the potential of effective evaluation practices that can really contribute to continued professional growth. So that's my soapbox on that one. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in that because we just haven't been there in the state for a number of years. All right, moving right along. House Bill 1220 removes barriers to educator preparation. This is a step in the right direction in that it will help districts working with student teaching programs. We won't be paying for this from our budget, but student teachers will essentially be eligible for annual stipends of up to $11,000 if they're enrolled in a 16-week residency, up to $22,000 if they're enrolled in a 32-week residency, essentially the difference between a half a year or a full year. And it helps create some funds for approved institutions of higher education to help offset these costs for student teachers, as well as to help teachers in the cost of taking their competency exams. So there's a whole lot, obviously, in the realm of how we're addressing the teacher shortage in our state. And this is a bill that I think represents, like I say, a step in the right direction there.
Is there any limit on how many interns or prospective teachers the district can have on board at any particular time?
Not per se. What I'm not aware of, Mr. Taylor, is if there is a limit to the number of student teachers who are eligible for this type of stipend within those programs themselves. But I'm proud to say that we are brokering some partnerships right now, specifically with UCCS. And Kristen, is there another one that you were talking to, or primarily UCCS? So we're expanding some of our student teaching opportunities within the district. Is there any others that I'm missing? So it's definitely an area that we want to continue to zoom in on in terms of the different institutions that are looking for host teachers or host schools to facilitate that student teaching experience. Moving into the finance realm, so House Bill 1390 is essentially the 2022 School Finance Act that sets the funding levels for all of the state's districts. So you see the base per pupil funding amount, the next year total program funding amount at $8.42 billion, and the BS factor being reduced to its lowest amount since its inception at $321 million. So again, step in the right direction. Not everywhere we want it to be, but it's certainly an improvement.
Dr. Summers?
Sure.
So this is significant, right? So this has been reduced now how many years in a row?
Well, 5, 6, several. I don't know the exact number.
And so from its highest point, what percent is remaining?
What percentage?
I believe about 40% is remaining. Right?
From the original billion or so? Yeah, give or take.
Right. So it's so important the public understand this. And I fear the public really doesn't understand it because they don't have to. But the truth of the matter is the state's holding back your money in its simplest form, or our money. And lots of districts and lots of individuals and certain legislators have been fighting to try to get some of this back. And it represented in its highest point 10% or 10 cents on every dollar that we were supposed to be receiving from the state. Actually, not from the state, but cumulatively in our budget, even more. So this is wonderful, long overdue progress, but we still have a way to go. And it's really important for anybody listening in, anybody writing in the media, that we pay attention to this and we continue to let our elected officials know that the communities own the schools, and we would like all those funds back.
I concur.
Thank you for
This is, again,
thank you for your concurrence.
Well, do you want me to start on the education system is broken campaign, or a finance of education? Excuse me, it's not the system as a whole, but it is the financing. But you brought up some salient points.
This really, really matters, is why I wanted to stop for a moment. And I hope anybody that chooses to listen, watch, or view this later, or read something in the press takes a moment of pause to know that we're moving in the right direction, but we still have a ways to go.
It would have been a good opportunity in the slide, Mr. Schwartz, for a highlighted section that says Mr. Schwartz's discussion of impact, because no, you bring up some excellent points for sure.
We took it anyways.
Yeah, you did well with that. Okay, moving to the next finance-related slide. This also represents progress and movement. And if you were to ask me how long it's been for this to be addressed, I couldn't answer it. I don't know the last time that distributions to administrative units, which we operate an administrative unit here in Lewis Palmer School District 38, under the direction of our very own Mr. Rick Frampton, but we are increasing the per child with a disability amount from $12.50 to $17.50. So if you do the quick math on that, we have about 620 students that are identified with disabilities currently. So that per pupil increase essentially goes directly to special education funding. We also have additional appropriated dollars that will allow us, these are tier A dollars, there's tier B dollars as well that are going to be part of our bottom line. And it also requires us, or requires the SPED Fiscal Advisory Committee, that's at a state level, to analyze and report on special education funding, the effectiveness of the current model, so on and so forth. So there was some really good attention that was given to this particular category. Is there anything I'm missing on this, Mr. Frampton?
Can I jump in real quick?
Ms. Upchurch, please.
This is something that we have robustly talked about at every Colorado Association of School Boards meeting on the need for increased funding for our special education students. For every dollar that it takes to educate a student on the special education spectrum, it is pennies of what the state reimburses. So this $500 per pupil for special education was a bright light at the end of a tunnel, and well, much needed and much celebrated. I still think there's more that can be done. That's my quarterback armchair.
There is, absolutely. And then the only other thing I would add that's not necessarily contained in the slide is I'm very pleased to share that the vast majority of openings or vacancies that we have had within our special education ranks, we have been able to fill, partly because we were able to create a hard-to-fill stipend, as well as an incentive for those who are staying on board. And a lot of those dollars, when we look at how those will be divvied out, are going to go directly to the individuals, to the special education resource services team and related staff that are the ones that are directly providing these resources, in addition to other programming needs and other curricula that help meet the needs of our kids. But really what I want to get at here is there's a direct relationship to the increase of available dollars and our ability to ensure that we're fully staffed and meeting the needs of all of our kids.
I have a question. So is it fair for me to interpret it this way? So the base per pupil funding is going to 7,500 rounded, and then over and above the 7,500, there's a 1,250 previously incremental amount per child with a disability, which is now going to 1,750.
Correct.
So a child that has sped services, etc.
Yep.
Instead of getting the 7,500, the district gets the 7,500 now plus 1,750.
Essentially, yes. That's a way to think about that. Yep. And it's based on our overarching special education count, which commences every December. So.
But the net delta is 500
Yes.
year on year.
Correct. Guys are on it. All right. Moving on. One more finance related, at least under these series of slides. Something you may hear about, and there is a whole lot that can be discussed relating to this particular bill, Senate Bill 202, which essentially is a state match for mill levy override revenue. The only caveat is we can't get too excited about this because our district currently does not meet the eligibility criteria for any state matching revenue given the fiscal demographics of our community. We're happy to zoom in on this issue more to show you why, but the short end of it is we have too high of assessed valuation and our free reduced lunch rate is not significant enough to warrant that criteria being met. So this is helpful for certain districts within the state. I believe the total number is somewhere in the 40 to 50% range. So there's about half of the districts that do qualify, and we're one that does not. But I do want to call it out because if somebody says, oh, what about that? The simple answer to it is we don't meet the threshold. Something that we will be spending more time on as we go into the upcoming school year is a bill that will require administrative units to essentially adopt a policy that addresses how a student who has a prescription from a qualified healthcare provider for medically necessary treatment, including applied behavioral analysis or ABA therapy, receives such treatment in the school setting as required by applicable federal and state laws. All of that to say, we'll look closely at what our policy currently allows for. I'm really confident in our ability to be able to adapt to this new bill and to do so in a way that's respectful of the time that we have with our kids during the school day, as well as making sure that there are creative solutions for meeting their needs in that medically necessary treatment category. Again, Mr. Frampton will help lead these efforts as we work into next year.
An example of that would be ABA, which is a treatment that is sometimes used for students on the autism spectrum. There's differing opinions on its effectiveness and whether it belongs in schools or not, but that was a lot of discussion on that particular service when they wrote this bill.
Yeah, and I wasn't part of all the conversations, but this is a great example of a bill that included a lot of negotiating and compromise in the beginning to its final stages and how that wrapped itself up neatly. Mm-hmm. And then something else you will likely hear about as we work into next year is House Bill 1358, which is around clean water in our schools and child care centers. All of those words are really a fancy way of saying that we will, by or before the end of next school year, need to have a state-certified laboratory measure of the lead content in our water that's drawn from each drinking water source. So we'll be receiving guidance, training, technical assistance in our ability to comply with this. I should note that end of next school year, test needs to be done at the elementary level. We have another 6 months or so to do that at our middle school grades. And then depending on the results, there's certain criteria that we have to meet as a result.
So, quick question on this.
Sure.
Is the intent of this legislation more around piping than water source, given that there are very few schools that have their own water source? They typically tap into the neighborhood or the city water or whatever.
That's my understanding, is essentially to what degree do we have...
It's a piping issue. It's a
Yes.
piping safety measure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, but the idea the bill sponsors, what they talked about is that every student should be drinking clean water. And so there was a lot of debate on whose responsibility is it to ensure that our children are drinking safe drinking water. The schools, child care centers, YMCAs, or is it the water source's responsibility and the municipalities' responsibility?
So I have a question, if I might. Have we not tested our water in the past?
I don't have a decent answer for that. Chris, do you know?
It would appear that the test results that I am trying to secure at this time as a result of this are really from Woodman Water. And they are, the source and the provider, but to the degree that galvanized piping does become antiquated and aged and those types of things, I think that is the focus of what it is they're trying to do. And I think we need to get to the bottom of that, but the piping situation is something that we need to actively monitor now day to day. The source water might be clean, but once it gets to your piping and your infrastructure, does the school have a responsibility?
Well, that didn't quite answer my question. I understand this new law. What I'm asking is, have we, as a school district, ever tested our water?
I'm sure we have. I don't know the degree or frequency of such testing and how or at which time it was most recently completed. I don't know that we've tested every water fountain as a part of that process, but that's, we've got work within this area that we'll need to obviously zoom into.
Right, this fits right into our priority one.
Sure.
Obviously, and I know we've spent a lot of time on Palmer Ridge, and well, I'm sure there will be testing there. But it does seem a little curious to me that we don't have, or haven't had, I guess, any type of testing.
Well, there is testing, but associated with chlorination and those types of measures to verify the condition of the water. But I think what this focus is on the particles and elements within
specifically
the water.
lead.
Exactly. And so it's the nature of the antiquated infrastructure that's supporting the what's going on inside the walls of the school.
And Chris, I appreciate you're still on your learning curve. So in August, I would really like to get a better feel on the historical testing of our water, if whatever it is.
No
if
problem.
it existed, if it didn't exist, whatever.
I want to do the same thing.
Excellent, excellent.
There
Thank you.
There was a lot of debate on this bill because a lot of school districts don't test their water. A lot of childcare facilities, summer camps, let's say you send your child to Golden Bell up in Divide, they're responsible for doing this too. And so a lot of them, it's a financial burden. So there was a lot of debate on who's going to foot the bill on the financial burden. Nobody disagrees. We all want to make sure kids have clean water. Absolutely, 100%. But where's the money coming from was the big debate.
Right.
And a lot of folks it wasn't on their radar to think about that.
Right, especially with older facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks, Chris. So this was the final slide, but I know, Ms. Upchurch, you had a few others that you wanted to make sure to lift up as well.
Yeah, I also want to lift up the last slide about the Cosby Fall Delegate Assembly. And to your point, Ron, one of the things I'd like to possibly see us do is put together a resolution to forward to the Cosby Delegate Assembly that says that we need to prioritize buying down that BS factor. We've got 321 million left in the budget stabilization factor that needs to be bought down. And we have a lot of legislation that comes out, and that money comes out of the education budget. When they look at all of these different bills and it gets sent to the appropriations committee of deciding how much money is going to be invested into these bills, and they're usually done in grant form. So we need to be more, my opinion is that we need to be more aggressive with buying down that budget stabilization factor, that 321 million, before we start writing more legislation that costs more money. So that was one of the things I'd put forward and would suggest that we discuss. What I wanted to highlight too was when we talked about some of the school security stuff, there's a measure that sets up an $8 million grant for school security projects and $6 million program for student behavioral health services that are now available. There's another one, it's HB 1376, supportive learning environments. And it changes, there's a lot of changes regarding policies on hiring and employing SROs and discipline reporting requirements. It's a very long bill. I can forward the link to you instead of having you read through it all right here. And then another one, 1052, this bill requires public schools to now put on the student ID cards to include the Colorado Crisis Services as well as Safe to Tell, so that there's 2 numbers on each student ID. That one's still waiting for the governor to be signed, but that one did pass. And then for the educator part, SB 214 and HB 1029 were 2 bills that basically back in the General Assembly back in 2018, they wanted to ensure that para is fully funded in 40 years, and a major element of the bill was that annual $225 million payment to para from the legislature. And then during COVID, the General Assembly skipped those payments, so the legislators and governor were looking at making up those payments with those 2 bills. So that was it. Basically, they're now working on, I guess you could say they've kind of got a stabilization factor to para now, so to speak. So now they're trying to buy that down. And then there's another one, SB 171 is a privacy protections for educators. It adds educators to the list of protected persons. So effective just last month, Cosby suggests a sample change to policy GBJ, which would be personal records and files. Basically, it adds teachers to the list of protected personnel. So doxing, for example. It would be anybody who believes that their safe educators who believe their safety is at risk, or their families are, so they can be added to the protected persons list. And then there were 2 other financial ones that I wanted to bring up, which is SB 238. Was signed, and basically what that bill does is it reduces the valuation of assessed non-residential property from 29% to 27.9%, and then it reduces residential property to 6.765%, and so then the state will then have to backfill that additional monies. So there will be more backfill from the state because of those 2 reductions in percentage, which will then reduce local revenue. And then also in September, each taxpayer who filed their tax return will get a $400 tax refund, because there was, as was mentioned, there's an overflow of Tabor monies, so taxpayers will get $400 refund back for that too. And that's obviously per Tabor, they can't keep any surplus. That's all the additional ones that I would point out that kind of affect us.
I have a request. Tiffany, if you could take a summary of what you just said and get it to Vicki, I'd like that in the meeting record, similar to what we went through, because you added a lot.
Sure did.
And I think it would be helpful if we had a place to reference that in the future. The second thing was in public comments tonight, I heard about a suggestion about a resolution. I just want the public to be aware, I didn't get an email, so I'm not sure who that was sent to, but I don't have that. So you may want to resend it if you had a proposal. And that proposal was a resolution, as I recall, and I'd like to make sure we don't lose track of that. Did you get it, Dr. Summers?
I'm going to forward it to all of you right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Re-forward it, so coming your way. And then Ms. Upchurch, I can work with you on the addition to that
Oh, yeah.
PowerPoint slide, because you have that share access, so we can make sure to take
Yep,
care of that part.
yep, and I already have it typed out.
Great, thank you, ma'am. I think that concludes our legislative summary.
Yeah, any other comments or questions on government? Hearing none, let's move on. Ms. Subchurch raised the question on our consent agenda about item 10, the land use annexation petition form.
Yeah, happy to speak to this particular petition. So you may or may not be aware, we currently have one school of our 8 district-run schools that are part of the town of Monument, that are officially considered to be in the town's purview or governorship. We have had ongoing conversations with town officials, really dating back to, I want to say it started really around COVID, specifically around the desire to eventually transition to community policing of our schools, which would at some point in the future, not as early as this next year, because also on your consent agenda is the approval of the IGA with El Paso County Sheriff's Office that will renew our partnership with them. But at some point in the future, and as you may recall too, part of the sales tax increase that Monument did levy last year is intended to fund the police department and, again, in the long run, begin to fund police officers who will be our future SROs. So one of the primary goals of this annexation, and currently it is just limited to Lewis Palmer High School. We have had some initial conversations about the potential of Palmer Ridge and Lewis Palmer Middle, again, at some point in the future, essentially being annexed by the town. So this would enable a future agreement with the town to be sourcing our school resource officer program through the town of Monument specifically. That's one of the variables. There is also a variable of as the Jackson Creek expansion and the widening of that road begins to occur, both on Higbee as well as Jackson Creek Parkway, we will be ideally not seeing any direct impact to our campus, specifically Lewis Palmer High School, in the widening of that effort, but because there is a number of grants and different opportunities that the town may be eligible to apply for with additional public property that comes into their purview, that would be another advantage to this potential annexation. So as you can tell from that grid that's included in that petition, it really is Lewis Palmer High School property. At this point, I don't really see it as being hugely non-advantageous to holding anything back, but that's essentially where we've been in some of the conversations with the town. So it's been a mutually agreeable type of a conversation that we've had up to this point to take us to where we are today. And again, what I would stress is this is a phase that we're looking at, not the end-all be-all to the potential for annexation at a couple of other sites as well.
I have a question there on the 8 buildings you had mentioned.
Yes.
And one is in the town of Monument
Bear
today?
Creek.
Bear Creek. None of the others are.
That's correct.
So this annexation, as it relates to the SRO issue, adds one school.
For the time being, yes.
For the time being. Well, the chances of annexing Kilmer or Palmer Lake are probably pretty low, I would suspect.
That's correct.
So will we ever get away from, I mean, well, this annexation is not solving the issue that you...
It's multifaceted. The better answer to that additional dynamic, if we were to enter into a contract with Town of Monument to provide school resource officer support, we would also update our IGA with El Paso County Sheriffs that would essentially go on record to say that they would be open to Monument police officers being able to serve any of the schools within the district. So that would be an extension of what that future potential relationship would consist of. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't have El Paso County sheriffs showing up to a particular school in the event that there may be some type of a situation. In addition to the Palmer Lake Town Police, which obviously is much smaller, the Town of Monument. So there would continue to be coordination and partnership with a variety of law enforcement agencies. And as I'm saying all of that, I'm also looking to Dennis Dennis has something.
And you also alluded to the thought that Palmer Ridge and Lewis Palmer Middle School may be on the annexation
In the
list
future. In the future.
for the same reasons?
Primarily, yes. And I wouldn't venture into additional conversation about that right at the moment without making sure that we have account of any other dynamics that would be related to that future
Well, I'm kind of,
possibility.
I went there because you said there's no real disadvantage to this, but there's got to be an impact that's not clear yet.
I think what I would like to add to it is annexing them doesn't mean that necessarily we're switching to Monument PD. If anything, it just gives us more options. We're totally content with what the sheriff's office does. Right now, Monument PD does not have jurisdiction in our schools. By them annexing, that doesn't even mean that we can only use them. We can still use the El Paso County Sheriff's Office because the El Paso County Sheriff's Office has jurisdiction anywhere in El Paso County. Sure. But right now, Monument only has jurisdiction in Monument areas. So when Dr. Summers and I have talked about this, this just increases our options. As Monument PD grows, it certainly would make sense for us to consider them if they're driving by our schools all day long, as opposed to only the sheriff's office having jurisdiction when they may only have 1 or 2 officers north of Woodman. So look, this is kind of a long-term thing. We love the 2 SROs we have right now. We've made that very clear with them. But 2 to 3 years down the road, this puts us in a place to choose who we want as opposed to being told who we want.
Understood. But that's not really why I'm asking these questions. I'm really asking the questions of what's the impact to the school district if this annexation goes through for Lewis Palmer High School, then potentially down the road, Lewis Palmer Middle School and Palmer Ridge. What is the impact?
From my world, none.
Okay, for SRO purposes, virtually none. Then why are we doing it?
Ultimately, we've had some conversations with Town of Monument, and that's one of the main things that has surfaced. If there is the desire to go deeper in that conversation, I think we table this and we look further at it. There's nothing that is forcing us to go through with this right this second. It has been part of some ongoing conversation that we've had related to growth in the town, related to other potential impacts that, to be honest with you, I couldn't list out for you in a comprehensive way to say it's A through Z reasons why.
So I would like to hear from each board member what your thoughts are around this annexation of Lewis Palmer and the potential down the road of other schools being annexed, and just see where your minds are right now.
Well, I'll go ahead and start off, Mr. Taylor. First of all, you bring up a great point as far as having Town of Monument, their police officers having jurisdiction. For me, it doesn't make sense to piecemeal this. If we're going to annex schools, let's do them all at one time and have a systematic plan to address the SROs either through the City of Monument or through El Paso County. This just seems a little messy to me, and as one board member, I would suggest that we pull this from the consent agenda and just table the issue until we have some additional information or until we feel that there's a impending need to move forward with it.
Thank you, Matt. Ron?
Couple things. One is that the town is continually growing its footprint and annexing a lot of land with a lot of the development. To Mr. Clausen's point, we probably should have a good understanding of what it means to be annexed or not and how it impacts our public and student and staff and building safety, and if there's any financial impact. So my question is, we probably don't have a working session scheduled until September, maybe August, but maybe we could spend 30 minutes on that, have Mr. Foreman come in and walk us through the city's posture and position and rationale. And if it's in the students, staff, and community's best interest, maybe we do what Mr. Clausen says and we go wholesale to the left or to the right. And then it's easier for everybody. But at the end of the day, this is, I mean, the discussion we're having so far is not really fiscal. It's about staff and student safety, and it's non-negotiable, right? That's our number one thing we do.
You know, and then I guess another concern that I have is, sorry for interjecting, is, you know, potentially if there's an annexation of Lewis Palmer, you know, obviously we could have a SRO, but, you know, I don't want to get in a situation where the El Paso County says, well, you guys need to provide a SRO, and City of Monument doesn't have the resources to do so, or provide a SRO that is there during regular school hours. So once again, to reiterate, I just think this is a little messy, and I would like to have a little more information, and if we're going to do it, let's do all of our schools within the town of Monument, not piecemeal them.
Thank you. Ron, anything else?
No.
Tiffany?
I have two questions and a comment. And I'll start off with the comment. Personally, I don't have a problem at all with annexing to the town of Monument, and it may be beneficial. It may be that there's some beneficial collaboration that's better. I don't know, so that's why I want to know more information on this. And my thought also goes to with the right now land responsibility and ownership and is a hot topic, especially with the growth here in our community. So I also wonder if this is an opportunity to allow the community to share in a public comment. Maybe there's nothing to share. Maybe there is. I don't know. There's just more information I would like to know too. My question is, what would be the financial impact? Is there cost savings to this? And the safety impact. It sounds like the safety impact. I understand kind of why we're doing this. Maybe it's more response time, for example, I think would be much quicker, I guess. But it's just more information I need to know, and I think that maybe this is something that we can, the community might want to be engaged in this. And maybe there's a place, maybe there's not a place. I have no idea. So I'm keen on tabling it and I'm in support of it right now as it stands, but I'm also keen on tabling it.
Anything else? Tiffany, no?
Nope. No.
Teresa, any comments?
Yeah, and actually a couple of questions, if I may. As I understand the discussion, the annexation provides additional resources or options for response should a need arise. Is that accurate, Mr. Coates?
I can't answer yes or no to that because I trust Monument and I have a great working relationship with Monument, and they would be all hands on deck tomorrow if this does or doesn't. I think it's I'm not exactly sure of the timeline of this. Dr. Summers could do, but as far as safety goes, I can't sit here and tell you that we're safer one way or the other. We're going to be, both of those agencies would do anything that we ask from them.
Okay, so I think I'm understanding that right now, currently, there's not a need.
Not today, no.
Okay, and then secondary to that, is there a discrepancy between safety and security at our two different high school sites?
I don't believe so, no.
Teresa, by discrepancy, can you expand what you're referring
Oh,
to?
thank you. I didn't hear what you said. Yeah, is there a difference in security at Palmer Ridge versus a difference in security at Lewis Palmer High School?
Overall, no. I mean, there are two different campuses with two different surrounding areas, different access points. Is part of this, when this came up, is when you look at what the town of Monument has vision 3 to 5 years from now, maybe that would make a little more sense. I mean, it's pretty much from, 105 to Walmart is going to be full. So.
And my apologies, I'm unable to download this document. So, and I don't recall from having reviewed it a few days ago. Who is requesting the annexation?
Lewis Palmer School District. That's why we're having this conversation.
It's our petition right now, Teresa.
Okay.
That's the
what I was
process.
understanding. So, if there is not as one board member, if there is not a security issue right now, I'm fine, along with my fellow board members, request to gather more information. I just don't want to push into the opening of school with any hint of a security issue at either one of our high school sites. That would be my main concern.
No.
Understood. That makes a lot of sense. Teresa, thank you.
I'm just going to concur with the board members and just say that this concept we need to look at comprehensively and as a part of our long-range planning. And it sounds like we're potentially piecemeal, and that's, we're not prepared to go forward at this point. So let's put this on a work agenda,
Yep.
do whatever we need to do to really do it systemically and comprehensively.
Appreciate all the feedback. Happy to do all that.
Awesome. Now, having pulled item D10, I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended and as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none. Ms. Wood?
Mr. Clausen?
Aye.
Ms. Phillips?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Upchurch?
Aye.
Well, thank you very much. That was a shorter board meeting than normal, but I appreciate it. We will stand adjourned until such time that we schedule again.
Keep an eye out for calendar invites, because now that we have the board meeting dates updated, Ms. Wood will be very active in sending you invites for next year's calendar. So thank you.